Should anyone own the North Pole? Should anyone own the North Pole? Focus question. Why is the North Pole important to some countries? Introduction. When you hear the words North Pole, do you think of a cold, empty place out in the middle of nowhere? Yes, it's cold and remote, but it's far from empty. Actually, the North Pole and the area around it, the Arctic region, are filled with natural wonders. Who should those treasures belong to? Separate countries, all people, or to the planet itself? Several countries are competing to own plants of the Arctic region beyond their own borders. These graphs for Arctic resources will affect not only the North Pole but all of planet Earth. Geography. The North Pole is the Arctic Ocean and the northernmost place on Earth. It's surrounded by sea ice, which forms the Arctic ice cap. The size of the Arctic ice cap changes during different seasons as temperatures rise and fall. Overall, the Arctic ice cap has been shrinking at a rate of 3.2% every 10 years since 1981. Scientists have evidence that the cause is climate change, permanent to lasting changes in the Earth's weather patterns. 5 countries surround the North Pole: Norway, Russia, Canada, the United States, and Greenland. Which one owns an area that measures 200 nautical miles, 230 miles, or 370 kilometers out from its coastline? Within those 200 nautical miles, which country or region controls the rights to resources? Those resources include water and wind for energy production as well as minerals and fish. Beyond the boundary are international waters. The International Seabed Authority, ISA, sets rules out taking mineral resources from the seafloor at the high seas. The ISA is part of an agreement between countries. The agreement states that international waters are supposed to benefit all people, not separate countries. Climate change. Earth's climate patterns have been shifting over the past 100 years. The past 20 years have seen many of the warmest years ever recorded. While not all parts of the water are warming at the same rate, global air temperatures have increased about 2 degrees over the past century. Almost all scientists agree that an important cause of higher temperatures is carbon dioxide in Earth's atmosphere, produced by human activities like burning coal to power factories and using petroleum products for cars. Carbon dioxide and other gases in the atmosphere trap the sun's heat energy, preventing it from escaping into space. Scientists know this climate is heating up 10 times faster than it heated up in other naturally occurring warming periods. There are many different effects of climate change. Some places will experience droughts and extremely high, more frequently hurricanes. In the ocean, coral reefs will die because coral can't survive in high temperatures. And in the Arctic, climate change is causing glaciers and polar ice caps to melt and sea levels to rise. As of early 2014, 165 countries plus the European Union had ratified or approved this agreement. After ratification, a country has 10 years to file a request if it believes it deserves any areas beyond its exclusive economic zone, EEZ. If a country's request is approved, all resources in the larger area belong to that country. Why might a country want to expand its territory? Why the North Pole is valuable? The Arctic region, the area north to the Arctic Circle, has a wealth of natural resources. One of the ones people are most dependent on is petroleum, which includes both air and natural gas, also located under the Earth's surface. Petroleum is easier to reach now than in the past because the Arctic ice kept melting. Right now, the Arctic region provides about 10% of the world's oil and 25% of its natural gas. Experts estimate that an even larger supply for each may be discovered near the North Pole in the future. According to the Environmental Protection Agency, using petroleum-based energy causes a lot of pollution and is the main cause of climate change. Many climate Scientists believe that, in order to reduce space pollution, countries will have to stop using petroleum-based energy immediately. However, petroleum projects are the main energy sources around the world. We depend on them for more than half our energy. They're non-renewable, meaning they will run out someday, possibly as soon as 40 to 50 years from now. As a result, many countries are scrambling for new supplies of petroleum. We could decrease our dependence of petroleum by using other energy sources such as wind, solar, and electric power. Beyond natural resources, the Arctic offers the promise of new shipping routes. Right now, most of those routes can be used only during warmer months. When much of the sea ice melts, however, with continued melting, routes may be open during much more of the year. For example, a ship recently traveled from northern Russia to China during February for the first time ever. Dangerous businesses. Obtaining natural resources in the Arctic region is riskier and more expensive than in most other parts of the globe. Here's why. Regular equipment can't always handle the climate. Special equipment must be used, or in some cases developed, that can work in the extreme cold, wet conditions. Transporting materials and people to and from such a remote location is expensive. Higher wages need to be paid to people to work in such remote place. If accidents happen, the distance from search and rescue facilities might mean additional loss of life or increased damage to equipment of the environment. Regular cleanup equipment can handle Arctic oil spills. Cleaning up oil spills in sea ice is much more complicated than in liquid water. Scientists and environmental groups argue that the Arctic region is valuable not only to humans. It's also valuable because of the natural environment and wide variety of life forms it supports. These include tundra vegetation, caribou, polar bears, whales, and seals. Using more Arctic resources could upset the natural environment in many ways. Polar bears are already in danger of extinction because the polar ice melt. Many scientists believe that between 2015 and 2100, most polar bears will die off. Scientists are also concerned that drilling for petroleum could negatively impact caribou and bird pollutions. Roads, trucks, power lines, and drilling cause noise and other disruption for wildlife, which might impact migratory and mating patterns. Indigenous people of the Arctic. Indigenous people make up about 10% of people living in the Arctic, and the Arctic is home to 40 distinct indigenous ethnic groups, including the Sami and the Inuit. While all Arctic indigenous tribes, nations, and groups are different, they are similar in that their culture and survival are built on indigenous knowledge. Indigenous knowledge has been developed over the thousands of years through observation of the Arctic's unique environment and traditions that reflects the surroundings. Inuit people, both in the past and today, rely on wildlife such as caribou, seals, walruses, and whales. They use every part of these animals, such as bones, feet, fat, and skin. These resources provide them food, clothing, boats, and tools. Because the lifestyle of Arctic indigenous peoples relies so much of the environment, they are uniquely hurt by climate change. When ice melts, it is more difficult for members of these groups to hunt the animals that are important to their way of life. Some indigenous peoples are at risk of hunger because hunting provides much of their food. Changes into the environment also make water less safe to drink. Who wants the North Pole? 4 countries, Norway, Russia, Canada, and Greenland, have filed requests for larger territories than they now own. In other words, those 4 countries want more of the Arctic region than just their EEZ. In some cases, they want territory all the way to the North Pole. Russia's Arctic coastline is about 4,300 miles, 7,000 kilometers long. It has the largest coastline of any country bordering the Arctic Ocean. In 2007, Russia sent a small research ship to the sea floor at the North Pole. The ship gathered samples of soil and water from an underwater land feature called the Lomonosov Ridge. Scientists hoped to prove that the ridge is part of Russia and should belong to Russia. Ownership would give Russia the right to any natural resources found there. In 2021, Russia claimed even more of the seabed, adding 705,000 square kilometers to its claims. However, across the Arctic Ocean, the Lomonosov Ridge connects to Canada, which has the second largest Arctic coastlines. Canada also claims this underwater mountain ridge as part of its seabed. Denmark, too, seeks ownership of the ridge because it has a historic relationship with Greenland. Canada and the United States disagree about ownership of another area, the Beaufort Sea, which is north of both Western Canada and Alaska. All these disputes have to do with mineral rights as well as control of shipping routes. Russia, Norway, and possibly other nations are also interested in expanding their territories for military purposes. They are worried that they might someday need to defend their Arctic resources. They also want good locations for military bases in case of a war between Eastern and Western Hemisphere countries. Arctic routes would shorten travel distances for military planes and ships to reach their targets. No decisions have been made yet about countries' requests to own more the Arctic region. Each country believes it has good reasons to expand its territory. The disputes continue to set the countries at odds with each other. Could there be a different plan for the changing Arctic region? What about the North and what about the South Pole? The South Pole, at the other end of Earth's axis, is also a place of extreme cold. An international agreement prevents any country from owning Antarctica or using its resources. The continent is set aside for scientific research and peaceful purposes only. No military activities permitted there. Should those same guidelines be applied to the Arctic region? Conclusion: 50 or 100 years from now, should any country own the Arctic region, including the North Pole? Some people believed that indigenous groups and their indigenous knowledge should be given greater consideration in these debates. 6 Arctic indigenous groups are considered permanent participants in the Arctic Council, a group that encourages Arctic collaboration and problem solving across nations through the Arctic Council. These groups have input on policies and laws impacting the Arctic. The countries that want to expand their areas of control in the Arctic region face important decisions. Which path will win? Peaceful cooperation or competition for control? Should the threat of climate change and the importance of the Arctic's wildlife impact these decisions? Which direction do you think the Arctic countries should choose?